When my parents' will was read, my brother Marcus got the $600,000 mansion in Seattle, while I got a rotting cabin in the woods worth maybe $40,000. Everyone at the reading felt sorry for me. Marcus smirked. My wife Rebecca looked horrified. The lawyer actually apologized. But what I found buried under that cabin 3 weeks later made Marcus's inheritance look like pocket change. Before I tell you exactly what was hidden there and what I did to Marcus when he tried to take it, please subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments which state you're watching from. Stories like this prove that assumptions about who parents loved more can cost you everything. My name is David Chun, and I'm about to tell you how my parents' apparent favoritism turned into the greatest gift anyone could receive, but only because I was willing to do what Marcus never would: actual work. The moment I knew something was wrong came during the will reading itself. Attorney Sharon Kim sat behind her mahogany desk in downtown Portland, her expression carefully neutral as she read our parents' last wishes. Marcus Chun, my older brother by 4 years, sat across from me in his $2,000 suit, his wife Jennifer beside him in Chanel. I wore jeans and a flannel shirt because I'd driven straight from my construction job. Rebecca, my wife of 12 years, squeezed my hand nervously. To my eldest son Marcus, Sharon read, "I leave the family home at 1247, Overlook Drive in Seattle, Washington, assessed value $600,000, fully paid, along with all furnishings, vehicles, and contents therein." Marcus's smile was immediate and broad. Jennifer actually clapped quietly. The Seattle house was beautiful: 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, updated kitchen, panoramic views of Puget Sound. Our parents had bought it in 1995 for $180,000, and it had appreciated nearly 4 times. I'd helped Dad renovate the kitchen in 2019. Spent 2 weeks installing custom cabinets. To my youngest son David, Sharon continued, and I sat up straighter. "I leave the property at Route 47, mile marker 23, Cascade County, Montana, along with all structures and contents therein." Silence. "That's it," Rebecca whispered. Marcus leaned back, trying not to look too pleased. "The old hunting cabin? That hasn't been there in what, 15 years? "Closer to 20, I said quietly. Sharon cleared her throat. "There's a note attached to David's bequest." She unfolded a piece of paper in my father's handwriting. "David, this property requires work that Marcus would never do. I trust you'll understand why when you see it. Love, Dad." Marcus actually laughed. "Work? It's a shack, David. Probably condemned by now." "Marcus," Jennifer said, but she was smiling too. After the reading, I stood in the parking lot with Rebecca, watching Marcus and Jennifer drive away in their Mercedes. The Oregon rain came down steady and cold. $600,000 versus a broken cabin, Rebecca said. "David, I know you and your dad were close, but this feels like he loved Marcus more." I didn't say that, but she was thinking it. Everyone was thinking it. Marcus had always been the golden child. Harvard MBA, tech executive, married to a lawyer, 2 perfect kids. I was the younger son who'd chosen construction work, community college, a modest life in Portland. On paper, it looked like our parents had made their choice clear. "Let's drive up there," I said. "See what we actually got." "It's in Montana, David. That's a 10-hour drive." "I need to know." We made the trip that following Saturday. Route 47 wound through the Cascade Mountains, past logging towns and empty forests. Mile marker 23 appeared suddenly, and I turned onto what used to be a gravel road, but was now mostly mud and weeds. The cabin sat in a clearing, and calling a cabin was generous. 1 story, maybe 800 square feet, logs dark with rot, roof sagging in the middle, windows either broken or missing entirely. The front porch had partially collapsed. A rusted pickup truck from the 1970s sat nearby, tires flat, hood open to the elements. "Oh, David," Rebecca said softly. I got out and walked closer. The door hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside, I could see water damage, mold, debris. Animals had clearly been living here for years. The place smelled like decay and abandonment. But I also saw something else. The foundation stones looked solid. The log construction, despite the rot, showed craftsmanship. The location was incredible, surrounded by old-growth forest, a stream running 50 yards from the front door, mountains visible through the trees. If someone put in the work, serious work, this could be something. Requires work that Marcus would never do. I repeated Dad's note aloud. What does that mean? Rebecca asked. I don't know yet. I spent the next 2 weeks thinking about that cabin. Marcus called once to gloat. Hey, little brother, how's your palace in the woods? Jennifer and I are getting the Seattle place appraised. Might be worth more than $600,000, actually. Market's hot. Good for you, Marcus. You could probably sell your land for $30,000, maybe $40,000 if you find the right sucker. Lots aren't worth much out there. After I hung up, Rebecca found me staring at Dad's note. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Dad was a civil engineer for 40 years. He chose every property he ever owned carefully. He wouldn't leave me something worthless. But it is worthless, David. We saw it. Maybe. Or maybe there's something I'm not seeing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dad's last visit before the cancer took him. He'd asked me about work, about the houses I was helping build, about whether I enjoyed working with my hands. Marcus had visited too, but spent the whole time on his phone dealing with some tech merger. Dad had noticed. I'd seen the disappointment in his eyes. Marcus has money, Dad had said to me that day. But you have something more valuable. You know how to build things, how to fix things, how to see potential. At the time, I'd thought he was just being nice to his blue-collar son. Now I wondered. Monday morning, I called in a week's vacation from my construction job and drove back to Montana alone. Rebecca thought I was crazy, but she knew better than to argue when I had that look. I arrived at the cabin with tools, a generator, work lights, and camping gear. If I was to figure out what Dad meant, I needed to really examine this place. The first 3 days were just clearing and cleaning. I hauled out years of debris, old furniture, animal nests, broken glass, rotted boards. I patched the worst holes in the roof with tarps. I set up my tent nearby because sleeping in the cabin wasn't safe yet. On the 4th day, I started examining the structure itself. The rot was mostly superficial. The core logs were solid Douglas fir, notched and fitted with serious skill. This wasn't amateur work. Someone, probably my grandfather who'd built it in the 1960s, had known what they were doing. I was checking the foundation when I noticed something odd. The cabin sat on stone pillars, standard for the era, but the crawl space underneath was unusually deep. Maybe 4 feet instead of the typical 2. I grabbed my flashlight and crawled under. The ground beneath the cabin was mostly dirt and rock, but in the far corner, I noticed the stones were arranged differently, more deliberately, almost like they were covering something. My heart started beating faster. I spent the next hour moving stones. They'd been carefully placed, not mortared, designed to be moved by someone who knew they were there. Underneath, I found a wooden hatch, maybe 3 feet square, fitted flush with the ground. The hatch had a simple latch, no lock. I lifted it, shining my light down into darkness. A ladder descended about 8 feet into what looked like a hand-dug cellar. The air that came up smelled dry and cool, not moldy like I'd expected. I climbed down slowly, testing each rung. At the bottom, my flashlight revealed a space about 10 feet square, walls reinforced with timber, ceilings supported by heavy beams. And along one wall, stacked neatly, were metal boxes. Military surplus ammo cans, the kind designed to be waterproof and airtight. 20 of them, each labeled with black marker in my father's handwriting. Insurance 1975. Insurance 1980. Insurance 1985. The dates went up by 5-year increments until Insurance 2020. My hand shook as I opened the first can. Inside, wrapped in plastic and sealed with desiccant packets, were gold coins. American eagles, Canadian maple leafs, South African Kruger ants. Each coin gleaming like it had been minted yesterday. I opened another can. More gold coins. And another. Silver bars this time, stamped with dates and purity marks. The 4th can held something different. Bundles of cash, older bills, hundreds of dollars and $50s from the 1980s and 90s. And underneath the cash, papers, stock certificates from major companies, some dating back 50 years. I sat down hard on the dirt floor, my flashlight shaking in my hand. My father and grandfather had been hiding wealth down here for decades. Not spending it, not declaring it, just accumulating it slowly and steadily, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. I spent the next 6 hours cataloging everything. 20 ammo cans total. 12 contained precious metals, gold and silver coins and bars. 6 contained cash in various denominations. 2 contained stock certificates, bearer bonds, and other financial instruments from an era when such things could be held anonymously. By my rough estimation, the precious metals alone were worth somewhere between $15 and $20 million at current prices. The cash added another $2 million. The stock certificates and bonds, if they were still valid, could be worth millions more. Marcus got a $600,000 house. I got $30 million in untraceable assets. And suddenly Dad's note made perfect sense. This property requires work that Marcus would never do. Marcus would have taken one look at this rotting cabin and sold the land without ever setting foot inside. He would have never cleared the debris, never examined the foundation, never crawled into that deep crawl space to investigate the unusual stonework. But Dad knew I would, because I was a builder, because I saw potential, because I was willing to do actual work instead of just collecting what looked valuable on the surface. I sat in that underground room for a long time, holding a gold coin that had probably been bought by my grandfather in 1975 for maybe $150. Today, it was worth $2,000. My father had continued the tradition, adding to the hoard every 5 years, building wealth slowly and patiently, hiding it from taxes and governments and anyone who might try to take it. And he'd left it to the son who would appreciate the work that went into it. But as I climbed back up the ladder, I realized something important. Marcus couldn't know about this. Not yet. Because the moment Marcus found out I'd inherited tens of millions while he got a fraction of that, he'd fight. He'd claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything to get his hands on what he thought should be his as the eldest son. No, I needed to be smart about this. Strategic. I needed to make Marcus think he'd won. That night, I called Rebecca from my tent. You need to come up here. David, I can't just. Rebecca, trust me. You need to come up here right now. She arrived the next afternoon. I cleaned up the cabin's interior and covered the hatch back up with stones. When she walked in, I said nothing, just took her hand and led her to the crawlspace entrance. David, what? Just trust me. I moved the stones and opened the hatch. We climbed down together, and I shone my light on the ammo cans. Open one, I said. She did. Her gasp echoed in the small space. How much? She whispered. 30 million. Maybe more. Rebecca sat down exactly like I had, her hand over her mouth. Your father, my father and grandfather, they built this over 50 years. And they left it to me because they knew Marcus would never find it. David, we have to declare this. Taxes, inheritance. Eventually, yes, but not yet. First, I need to make sure Marcus can't take it. Over the next week, Rebecca and I made a plan. The gold and silver we'd keep hidden for now. The cash we'd deposit slowly, in small amounts through different banks, claiming it was construction work earnings. The stock certificates we'd research with a financial attorney carefully to see what was still valid. But most importantly, we'd make Marcus believe I was struggling with my worthless inheritance. I called him from the cabin, making sure I sounded frustrated. Hey Marcus, I'm up at the Montana property. It's worse than I thought. I could have told you that, little brother. The whole thing needs to be torn down. Foundation shot, roofs collapsing, mold everywhere. I'm probably looking at $50,000 in demo costs just to clear the land. Ouch. Sorry, man. But he didn't sound sorry. He sounded satisfied. I might need to borrow some money from you, I said, hating every word but knowing it was necessary, just to cover the costs until I can sell the land. David, I'd love to help, but Jennifer and I are doing major renovations on the Seattle house. We're kind of tapped out right now. Of course they were. Marcus had never loaned me money in his life. Yeah, I understand. Just thought I'd ask. After I hung up, Rebecca looked at me. That was hard for you. Worth it. Now he thinks I'm desperate, and he's winning. He'll leave me alone. But I underestimated Marcus's greed. 2 weeks later, I was back in Portland working my construction job when Marcus called. Hey, David, I've been thinking about your Montana problem. What about it? What if I bought the land from you? Took it off your hands? I'd give you $50,000. That's more than fair market value for a lot with a condemned structure. You could use that money to cover your demo costs and walk away clean. I almost laughed. Marcus wanted the land. Even though he'd mocked it, even though he thought it was worthless, he couldn't stand that I had something he didn't. He needed to own everything. I don't know, Marcus. Dad left it to me for a reason. The reason was probably guilt about giving me the better property. Come on, David. 50 grand is good money. You could use it. There it was. The condescension. The assumption that I needed his help, his charity. Let me think about it. Don't think too long. Offer expires in a week. After he hung up, I told Rebecca what he'd offered. He wants the land, she said. Why? Because it's mine and he's Marcus. He has to win everything. I let the week pass without responding. Marcus called again, annoyed. David, I need an answer. I'm going to keep it, I said. Fix it up myself. It's what Dad would have wanted. Dad's dead, David. He doesn't want anything anymore. I'm trying to help you here. I don't need your help, Marcus. I hung up before he could respond. That was mistake number one. By refusing his generous offer, I challenged his worldview that he was the successful brother who had to rescue me. By claiming I didn't need his help, I'd insulted him. Marcus didn't like being insulted. 3 days later, I got a call from an attorney I didn't know. Mr. Chun, my name is Robert Paulson. I represent Marcus Chun in a legal matter regarding your parents' estate. My stomach dropped. What legal matter? Mr. Marcus Chun is filing a petition to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. He believes your father was not of sound mind when the will was drafted, and that you may have influenced him improperly to favor you with property that rightfully should have been distributed more equitably. I almost laughed. Marcus got a $600,000 house. I got a rotting cabin. How is that me being favored? Mr. Marcus Chun believes the Montana property may have value you haven't disclosed. He's requesting full discovery of all assets associated with that property, including surveys, appraisals, and any structures or contents therein. There it was. Marcus didn't actually believe I had anything valuable, but he was fishing, using legal pressure to force me to disclose everything about the property. And if I fought too hard, he'd know there was something to hide. Tell Marcus he can request whatever he wants, I said calmly. The will is valid. It was drafted by a licensed attorney, and Dad was evaluated by 2 doctors who confirmed he was of sound mind. This is a waste of everyone's time. We'll be moving forward with the petition regardless. You'll be served papers within the week. After I hung up, I immediately called Thomas Briggs, the estate attorney who'd helped draft Mom and Dad's will. Thomas, Marcus is contesting. On what grounds? Undue influence and diminished capacity. Thomas was quiet for a moment. David, your father and I prepared for this possibility. Marcus has always been difficult. Your father knew he might challenge anything that didn't favor him completely. So what do? We fight it, and we use the documentation your father left. What documentation? Come to my office tomorrow. There's something you need to see. The next morning, Thomas led me to his conference room and laid out a file folder. Your father didn't just write one will. He wrote 3 versions over 2 years, each time having himself evaluated by doctors to confirm his mental competence. He also wrote detailed letters explaining his reasoning for each bequest. Thomas opened a sealed envelope marked to be opened only in case of contest by Marcus Chun. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting, dated 6 months before he died. To whom it may concern, if Marcus is reading this, it means he's challenging my will. This doesn't surprise me. Marcus has always believed he deserves more than everyone else simply because he's Marcus. Let me be clear about my reasoning. I gave Marcus the Seattle house because it requires no work. You buy it, you enjoy it, you eventually sell it for profit. It's a passive investment, perfect for someone who views everything through the lens of immediate value. I gave David the Montana property because it requires vision. The cabin is worthless to anyone who can't see past its current condition. But David is a builder. He sees potential. He understands that real value often looks like nothing to people who don't want to work for it. The Montana property has been in our family since my father bought it in 1960. It holds our history, our legacy, and yes, our future. I trust David to discover what that means. I know Marcus never will. If Marcus is contesting this will, it's because he's discovered that the Montana property has value he didn't initially see. He wants what David has because he always wants what he doesn't have. This is his character flaw, not my diminished capacity. My mind is clear. My intentions are clear. The will stands as written. Thomas Chun P. I read the letter 3 times. Dad had known. He'd known Marcus would fight, and he'd prepared for it. There's more, Thomas said. He pulled out medical evaluations, video recordings of Dad explaining his wishes, testimony from the doctors who treated him. Your father built an airtight case. Marcus will lose this contest. How long will it take? 6 months, maybe a year. Depends on how hard Marcus pushes. And in the meantime, the estate is frozen. You can't sell the property, can't make major changes, can't access any assets tied to it. Marcus knows this. He's trying to prevent you from doing anything with your inheritance while he fights. I drove back to Portland thinking about Marcus's strategy. He couldn't win the legal battle, but he could make it expensive and time-consuming. He could freeze my inheritance while he enjoyed his. He could make me suffer for refusing his generous offer. But Marcus didn't know about the $30 million hidden under the cabin. Money that wasn't technically part of the estate because it had never been declared. Money that no court could freeze because no court knew it existed. That night, I told Rebecca everything. We need to move the assets. Move them where? Somewhere safe. Before Marcus's lawyers start demanding property surveys and inspections. If they find the seller, everything gets complicated. David, that's hiding assets during litigation. That's illegal. The assets aren't part of the estate. They're not mentioned in the will. Dad and Grandpa hid this money long before the will was written. Technically, I haven't inherited it yet because I haven't officially discovered it yet. Rebecca stared at me. That's a very thin line. It's the only line we have. Over the next 2 weeks, I took another vacation from work and returned to Montana. This time, I brought empty duffel bags, a dolly, and a plan. Working only at night, I moved all 20 ammo cans from the underground cellar to a new location, a storage unit I'd rented under an LLC I'd formed, using cash for the deposits, keeping everything as untraceable as possible. The gold, silver, cash, and certificates were now hidden 200 miles away in Missoula, in a climate-controlled unit that no one connected to me could find. I left the cellar intact, but empty, filled the ammo cans with rocks to maintain their weight in case someone checked, and resealed everything. If Marcus's lawyers did discover the cellar, they'd find nothing but empty containers and questions with no answers. Then I documented the cabin's condition extensively. Photos of every rotted board, every hole in the roof, every sign of decay and damage. I got 3 different contractors to provide estimates for demolition and rebuilding. Estimates that range from $80,000 to $120,000. All of them agreed the structure was essentially worthless. When Marcus's lawyers served me with formal papers requesting full property disclosure, I handed over everything. Survey maps showing property boundaries. Contractor estimates showing the cabin was worthless. Photos documenting the decay. Tax records showing the land value at $35,000. I gave them everything except the one thing that mattered. The hearing was set for 6 months later, and in the meantime, Marcus made my life difficult. He contested every decision I tried to make about Mom and Dad's personal effects. He demanded joint approval for selling their car, their furniture, their belongings. He made the grief of losing our parents into a bureaucratic nightmare. Jennifer would call Rebecca to complain about how unreasonable I was being. Marcus just wants what's fair, she'd say. Your husband is being stubborn about a worthless cabin. Rebecca would respond calmly. Then why is Marcus fighting so hard for it? The question never got answered. 4 months into the legal battle, I got a strange call. Mr. Chun, my name is Gerald Foster. I'm a private investigator, and I need to inform you that I've been hired to conduct surveillance on you and your property. Excuse me. Professional courtesy. I've been hired by your brother's legal team to watch the Montana property and document any activity there. I want you to know this so you don't think you're being stalked or harassed. It's purely professional. Marcus hired a PI to watch me, to watch the property specifically. He believes there may be assets or value you haven't disclosed. After I hung up, I actually smiled. Marcus was so certain I was hiding something that he was paying someone to watch an empty cabin. The irony was beautiful. Everything worth finding had already been moved 200 miles away. I decided to have some fun with it. That weekend, I drove to the Montana cabin knowing Gerald Foster or whoever he'd hired would be watching. I brought tools, lumber, and work gear. I spent 3 days doing visible repairs, patching roof holes, replacing broken windows, cleaning up the exterior. I made the cabin look like I was investing time and effort into a worthless structure. I wanted Marcus to see me working. I wanted him to think I was foolish enough to sink money into this rotting building. I wanted him to believe there was nothing to find. Meanwhile, Rebecca and I were quietly meeting with a financial advisor in Seattle, someone recommended by Thomas Briggs who specialized in complex asset situations. His name was Howard Chun, no relation, and he'd spent 20 years helping people with inherited wealth navigate tax implications. $30 million in undeclared assets, Howard said, looking at the photos I'd shown him of the ammo can's contents. Your father and grandfather were very careful. All purchased legally, all owned legitimately, just never declared for tax purposes. Is that legal? Rebecca asked. It's complicated. Gold and silver coins purchased as collectibles don't require declaration. Cash holdings aren't illegal if the cash was earned legally and taxes were paid on that income. The stock certificates are trickier, but if they were purchased decades ago and never sold, there's no taxable event. So what do? I asked. You slowly legitimize everything. We set up trusts. We declare the assets in tranches over several years. We pay any applicable taxes, and we do everything by the book. It'll take time, but when it's done, everything will be completely legal and yours to use freely. And Marcus? Howard smiled. Marcus gets nothing because none of this is part of the estate. This is a separate inheritance your father and grandfather built outside the traditional system. As long as the will contest fails, and based on what you've told me, it will. Marcus has no legal claim to any of this. The hearing finally came 8 months after Marcus first filed his contest. We met in a conference room at the courthouse, with Marcus and Jennifer on one side, me and Rebecca on the other, and a probate judge presiding. Marcus's attorney, Robert Paulson, presented his case first. Your Honor, we believe Thomas Chun was suffering from diminished capacity when he drafted this will, showing favoritism toward his younger son for reasons we believe constitute undue influence. On what evidence? The judge asked. The disparity in bequests. Marcus Chun received a property worth $600,000, while David Chun received a property worth approximately $35,000. This suggests either impaired judgment or manipulation. Thomas Briggs stood. Your Honor, I have 3 separate medical evaluations of Thomas Chun, all conducted within 6 months of his death, all concluding he was of sound mind. I also have video testimony from Mr. Chun himself, explaining his reasoning for each bequest. The judge watched the video. Dad appeared on screen, looking thin from cancer but mentally sharp, explaining exactly what he'd written in his letter. I'm giving each son what suits his nature. Marcus gets immediate value. David gets long-term potential. That's not favoritism. That's understanding my children. Robert Paulson tried to push back. Your Honor, we believe the Montana property may have hidden value, mineral rights, timber rights, water rights, that David Chun is concealing. Do you have any evidence of this? The judge asked. We've had the property under surveillance. David Chun has been making improvements, suggesting he believes it has value worth investing in. I stood. Your Honor, may I address this? Go ahead, Mr. Chun. I've been cleaning up my father's property because it's my inheritance and I want to honor his memory. I've spent approximately $12,000 on basic repairs to a structure that 3 different contractors have valued at $0. I have their written estimates here. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to make something worthless into something I can eventually use as a family cabin. The judge reviewed the contractor estimates. Mr. Paulson, unless you have actual evidence of hidden assets, I'm inclined to validate the will as written. We request permission to conduct a full survey of the property, including ground-penetrating radar and— Denied, the judge said sharply. You can't go on a fishing expedition hoping to find something valuable just because you don't like how property was distributed. The will is clear, the testator was competent, and there's no evidence of undue influence. Case dismissed. Marcus's face went red. This is bullshit. Dad, obviously. Mr. Chun, the judge interrupted. Your father left you a $600,000 property. Many people would consider that generous. This hearing is concluded. Outside the courthouse, Marcus confronted me directly. I know you found something. Found what, Marcus? Something on that property. You're not stupid enough to invest $12,000 into a worthless cabin unless there's a reason. The reason is it's Dad's cabin. That's enough. Bullshit. You've always been a favorite, and now you're hiding what you got. I'll find out eventually, David. I'll figure out what you're hiding. Jennifer pulled him toward their car. As they drove away, Rebecca squeezed my hand. It's over. Not yet, I said. Marcus won't stop until he knows there's nothing to find. I was right. Over the next 6 months, Marcus became obsessed. He'd call at random times asking about the Montana property. How are the repairs going? Have you had the land surveyed? Ever think about selling it now that the legal issues are resolved? I kept my answers vague and boring. Slow progress. No need for a survey. Not selling. But I knew Marcus was still watching somehow, still convinced I'd found something valuable. His obsession was eating him up. He had a $600,000 house, a successful career, a beautiful family, but all he could think about was what I might have that he didn't. Meanwhile, Howard Chun and I were slowly, methodically legitimizing the $30 million. We'd set up 3 separate trusts, declared $2 million in discovered collectible coins, and paid the appropriate taxes, and begun the process of researching the stock certificates. Several of them were indeed still valid, representing shares in companies that had grown enormously over 50 years. Our net worth was approaching $35 million, and Marcus had no idea. Rebecca and I moved out of our small Portland apartment into a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy, but comfortable. I kept working my construction job because I enjoyed it, but I cut back to 3 days a week. We told everyone Rebecca had gotten a small inheritance from an aunt, enough to buy a house, but nothing dramatic. Marcus never questioned it. In his mind, Rebecca's family would have small inheritances while his family had real wealth. It fit his worldview perfectly. 2 years after Dad died, I got a call from Marcus that surprised me. David, I want to apologize. For what? For the legal battle. For being an ass about the inheritance. You were right. I was obsessed with the idea that you'd gotten something I didn't. Jennifer's been in therapy, and she's helped me see that I have a problem with needing to win everything. I didn't know what to say. This was the most self-aware Marcus had ever been. I'm glad you're working on yourself, I finally said. The Seattle house is great. We love it. And I've realized that Dad probably knew what he was doing, giving us each what suited us. I got the house I can enjoy immediately. You got the project you could build on. That's fair. Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. We talked for another 10 minutes, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually brothers. Like maybe the inheritance war was truly over. Then Marcus said, So listen, Jennifer and I are planning a family trip to Montana this summer. We thought we could stop by your cabin, see what you've done with it. The kids would love to see their uncle. And there it was. The real reason for the call. Marcus was still digging, still looking, still unable to let it go. The cabin's not really ready for visitors yet, I said carefully. Still pretty rough. We don't mind rough. It'd be fun to see it anyway. Let me check with Rebecca about our schedule. I'll get back to you. I never got back to him. 3 months later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. When I played it, I heard Marcus's voice, drunk and angry. I drove to your fucking cabin, David. You know what I found? Nothing. A half-fixed shithole in the woods with nothing valuable anywhere. I crawled under that cabin. I checked every corner. I looked everywhere. There's nothing there. I've wasted 3 years thinking you had something, and you don't have shit. You got exactly what it looked like, A worthless cabin that you're too stupid to walk away from. Congratulations, little brother. Dad left you garbage, and you're so sentimental you can't even see it. Rebecca listened to the voicemail with me. He broke into the property? Sounds like it. David, should we? No. Let him think he won. Let him believe he figured out. But he broke in. He could have damaged. There's nothing to damage. Everything important has been gone for 2 years. I called the Montana County Sheriff anyway and reported the trespassing. Filed a formal complaint. Got a restraining order preventing Marcus from coming within 500 feet of the property. Not because I was worried about him finding anything, there was nothing left to find, but because I wanted a legal record of his obsession. When Marcus got served with the restraining order, he called me furious. A restraining order? Are you serious? You broke into my property. I was checking on family land. You left a drunk voicemail admitting you searched the entire property without permission. That's criminal trespassing, Marcus. Family doesn't file restraining orders against family. Family doesn't spend 3 years trying to prove their brother is hiding something just because they can't stand the idea that Dad's choices were deliberate. Marcus hung up. We didn't speak for 6 months. During that time, Howard finished legitimizing the last of the assets. The stock certificates alone ended up being worth $8 million. Combined with the precious metals and cash, our total legitimate net worth was $36.7 million. We could have bought 10 houses like Marcus's Seattle mansion. We could have rubbed it in his face, shown him exactly how wrong he'd been about which son got the better inheritance. But we didn't, because Dad's letter had been right. Marcus only valued things he could see immediately. He couldn't understand delayed gratification, hidden potential, or the value of work. He'd spent 3 years obsessing over what I might have hidden instead of enjoying what he'd received. That was his punishment. Not poverty, but the knowledge that he'd wasted years of his life chasing shadows while I'd quietly built something real. I did eventually renovate that cabin, though. Spent about $200,000 over 2 years, turning it into a beautiful family retreat. Rebuilt it from the foundation up, using the best materials, the finest craftsmanship, everything Dad and Grandpa would have been proud of. It's where Rebecca and I go now when we need to remember what matters. Not the $30 million in the bank, not the investments, not the wealth, but the work, the vision, the understanding that real value isn't always visible to people who are just looking at the surface. Marcus and I eventually reconciled, sort of. We see each other at holidays, exchange birthday cards, pretend the inheritance war never happened. He thinks he won because he proved I didn't have anything hidden. I let him think that because his peace of mind is worth more than his jealousy. Sometimes Jennifer will mention how well Rebecca and I are doing. That tech job, David, God must pay well, she'll say, because we've let everyone believe I transitioned from construction to tech support. It's comfortable, Rebecca will say, and change the subject. Marcus doesn't know that the Montana cabin sits on land I eventually bought more of, 600 acres now, worth about $2 million if we ever sold it, which we won't. He doesn't know about the trust funds we've set up for our future children. He doesn't know that we donate more to charity each year than he makes in salary. He doesn't know because he never asked the right questions. He assumed Dad's choices were about favoritism instead of understanding. He assumed value had to be visible to be real. He assumed work was something to avoid rather than something that reveals hidden potential. 3 years ago, I was standing on the porch of the renovated cabin when I found one more thing Dad had hidden, an envelope taped inside a hollowed-out log, marked for David when the work is done. Inside was a short letter. Son, if you're reading this, it means you did the work. You saw past the surface and found what I left for you. More importantly, you understand now why I left it the way I did. Marcus needed easy success. You needed meaningful challenge. He got exactly what he could appreciate. You got exactly what you could become. The money doesn't matter. What matters is that you were willing to look deeper, to work harder, to see potential where others saw ruin. That's the real inheritance. The rest is just numbers. Love, Dad. I read that letter 3 times and cried. Not because of the money, but because Dad had understood me better than I'd understood myself. He'd known I needed to earn this inheritance, not just receive it. He'd known that easy money would have made me just another Marcus, focused on value instead of meaning, on having instead of building. Now, when people hear this story and ask if I regret the years of struggle, the legal battles, the obsession Marcus developed, I tell them the truth. I regret nothing, because I learned what Marcus never will, that the best gifts are the ones that make you work. That real wealth isn't what you have, but what you're willing to build. That a father's love isn't measured in dollar amounts, but in how well he understands what each child needs to grow. Marcus got his mansion and his immediate gratification. I got my challenge and my character development. We both got exactly what we needed, even if only one of us understands that. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like you got the short end of the stick in an inheritance, or if your parents seem to favor a sibling, I want you to understand something. Sometimes the least valuable-looking gift is actually the greatest test of character. Sometimes what looks like favoritism is actually wisdom. Sometimes the work itself is the inheritance. Don't be like Marcus, always looking for what you think you deserve, always obsessing over what someone else has. Be willing to do the work that reveals value. Be willing to see potential where others see nothing. Be willing to trust that the people who loved you might have understood you better than you understood yourself. Drop a comment below telling me about a time someone gave you something that seemed worthless but turned out to be valuable. And if this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that real value takes work to find. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about family, inheritance, and the complicated ways parents try to teach their children lessons even after they're gone. Your support helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Remember, a rotting cabin taught me more about life than a mansion ever could. Sometimes the real treasure is buried where only the patient are willing to dig.